we're doing all of this to be a good mom, but there may be suffering on their end because of it. We're not able to show up in the way that we want to because we are so burned out. We are so just done with everything. We're drained. There's not anything left to give when you are giving it all to these impossible standards. Welcome to Worthy Mother Podcast. I'm your host, Emily Hardy, a mom of two on a mission to help moms everywhere feel less alone. This is not a parenting podcast. Instead, it's a space for pushing back against societal expectations of perfection and embracing self-compassion in your motherhood journey. Let's get into it. Hey, it's Emily. I'm here alone today. It is a solo episode of Worthy Mother Podcast. I'm going to be talking about something that might seem a little weird at first, and that is lowering our standards in motherhood. I will explain what I mean by that, but before we get into it, I want to just take a moment to ask that if you are enjoying these episodes, if you are finding value in the conversations that we're having here on the podcast, if you could leave a rating and review wherever you listen, that would mean the world to me. Not only is it super encouraging to me to hear from you and how you're enjoying this show, but it does help other moms who come across the show know if it is something that may be a good fit for them to tune into, spend the time here. And obviously, with the purpose of the show being to help us come together and see that we are not alone in motherhood, helping spread the word, getting more moms on board is huge. So for today's episode, I am going to be making the case that lowering your standards may actually be the key to peace in motherhood. Now, you may have some pretty strong gut reactions to that, and I understand that, right? In what areas of our lives are we saying we need to lower our standards? I want to acknowledge that in most areas of our lives, we actually probably talk more about raising our standards, elevating our standards. And I'm on board with that, right? When it comes to our relationships and what we'll accept from other people, we might need to raise our standards if we're letting people walk all over us, if we're being people pleasers, things like that. If there's a toxic environment in the workplace, yeah, maybe we need to up those standards of what we're willing to accept. But in motherhood in particular, the standards that we're often trying to achieve can be really, really high, unreasonably high, sometimes to the point of being completely unreachable. And that helps no one. So if we can lower our standards of what we will expect from ourselves and maybe even those around us, it may help to just make the whole experience a little bit more peaceful. Now, importantly, lowering your standards does not mean having low standards. It's not about not caring. It's not about throwing our standards out the window. It's really about setting realistic expectations for ourselves and others so that we're not holding ourselves to just, again, these unrealistic standards that we're never going to reach and constantly feeling like we're failing. So many of us enter into motherhood with perfectionist tendencies, and for moms in particular, it's very easy to get stuck in a cycle of always feeling like we need to be doing things perfectly for our kids, right? We want the best for them, so we need to be doing the best for them. And it's a trap. It just keeps us in a cycle of feeling bad about ourselves. It keeps us in a cycle of feeling like we're never doing enough. And the negative impacts of that can be huge. So by the end of this episode, I hope that I can help you see why lowering your standards may actually be the best move for yourself going forward to find more peace in motherhood. So, of course, we can't have this conversation about lowering our standards in motherhood without really examining what the standards are. What expectations are we up against when we enter into motherhood? I talk about the perfect mother myth a lot, this idea that there is some mom out there who can do it all, be it all, and show up perfectly for her kids. She is endlessly patient. She is always available for her kids. She's always put together in that. She takes care of the house perfectly. She takes care of herself perfectly. She takes care of her husband perfectly. And she takes care of the kids perfectly. And the end result of that then is that the kids are going to be perfect too, right? Keep that in mind. Part of this, though, is also that she's contributing financially to the home. She is doing things outside of the home and has a social life, has friends, has these things that are seen as the right things for mom to do. But she is 100% available for her kids. And so she's always there for them. She's always with her kids. She's taking care of them all of the time. And you can kind of see how this perfect mother myth is not just unrealistic, unreasonable. It's actually impossible. We can't be all these things at once. There's not enough time in the day to do it all and do it all perfectly. But really, when we think about it, even if there was so much more time, you can't be with your kids 100% of the time and also have alone time with your partner and also have a job and also be going to the gym and blah, 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 right? All the things that you have to do. You can't do the 100% of the time with your kids and do any of that. So it's just not realistic. It's not real. This standard of a perfect mother is one that most of us do hold ourselves to, even if it's not consciously. And I know for me, there are times where I am so hard on myself for not being able to keep the house clean while working, while managing the kids, while doing all these other things that I'm trying to do. And when I stop to think about it and recognize like what that standard is that I'm trying to hold myself to, it's like I can understand and have compassion for myself that that's not an attainable standard, right? The standard of perfection that I'm trying to hold myself to. And I talk to so many moms who experience this as well. I would say that pretty much all of us experience in some capacity the holding ourselves to standards of the perfect mother in our lives in one way or another. But importantly, these standards are external. They are not actually what most of us value in being a mom, right? Most of us don't actually believe that we have to be with our kids 100% of the time. We may feel pressure to be with our kids 100% of the time, but we probably don't actually believe that that's the only way to be a good mom. We probably don't actually believe that we should be able to keep the house perfectly clean, keep in really tip-top perfect shape, bounce back after having our kids, make perfect meals every single day, and hold a career where we're contributing financially to the household, and be the most amazing partner, and get time away from our kids with our partner, and have a flourishing social life, and, right? Like we all can probably acknowledge that that's not what we actually believe a mom has to be able to do, right? Do all of those things to the highest standard to be like a good mom and to be considered like a worthy woman, a worthy person. And yet we are holding ourselves to those standards, again, oftentimes subconsciously. And doing so comes at a high cost. So many moms are chronically exhausted, to the point of burnout even. We are short-tempered. We have a hard time being patient with our kids because we're burning the fuse at both ends. We find ourselves snapping at our kids. We find ourselves having a hard time in our personal relationships, whether that's with our partner or with our family members or friends in our lives. And with all this focus on spending time on everybody else and to these really high standards, you end up losing connection with yourself. Like there's no time to turn inward. There's no time to really ask yourself, like, what do I need? What do I want? Because you're really providing for the needs of these standards, the wants of these external societal standards. And of course, when you start to lose that connection with yourself, your needs are not going met. And it just perpetuates the cycle of feeling exhausted, feeling burned out, feeling completely untaken care of, having a short temper, having a short fuse, and our other relationships continue to suffer. We feel like we're always behind. We feel like we can't get on top of things. We feel like we are outright failing because we're not meeting these standards. And that sucks. That can have a huge toll on our mental health when we feel like we are consistently not enough. And even in those seasons where maybe you do feel like you're on top of things, you do feel like you're delivering to the standard in different areas really, really well, it's usually not sustainable. This idea of doing it all can't last. And it doesn't make you a better mom. Like, I think that piece right there is so important to point to. Like, trying to do all these things and be everything to everyone at the level that the standard of the perfect mom requires us to be, it doesn't actually serve our kids in the way that we're probably aiming for. We're doing all of this to be a good mom, but there may be suffering on their end because of it. We're not able to show up in the way that we want to because we are so burned out. We are so just done with everything. We're drained. There's not anything left to give when you are giving it all to these impossible standards. And that is why I'm making the case for doing less, for saying, you know what? No, those super high standards are not what I'm going to hold myself to. I'm not going to hold myself to doing it all. I am going to intentionally choose to do less in motherhood and in life so that I can be a better mom, a more connected mom, and just a more fulfilled human being. When we make the intentional choice to do less, like it's an intentional choice, we can see it as just that, rather than seeing it as a failure, rather than seeing it as the missing of some mark that we were aiming for. Because no, the mark that we're aiming for is a different mark. It's a different standard that we're shooting for. So when we don't hit that highest standard, but we hit the standard we set for ourselves that's attainable, we can have that feeling of success. We can have that feeling of, I'm doing enough for what I believe is actually enough. So what does it look like, though, to do less in our lives? Because I know for me, sometimes it feels like, yeah, but what do I get rid of? What do I put off my plate? Because I want to be spending time with my friends, and I want the house to be clean. I want the house to be organized. I want to be spending time with my kids, and I want to be working. I need to be working, right? I need to pay my mortgage. So what can fall off the plate? And that is hard, and that's not going to look the same for everyone. But when it comes to doing less, we have to decide what our standards are in the different areas of our lives, what we're going to accept as enough. So that could be saying no to extra commitments, right? We often see like the good mom, the perfect mom, as being somebody who is so involved in her kids' school and is volunteering for the sports teams and is signing up for book club and is doing all of these things, right? This mom who we might idolize in our minds. And it can feel like if you're not doing those external things, you're not committing to those different roles outside of the home, that you're failing or you're not doing enough. It's okay to say no. It's okay to say no, even if you really do have the time, but you'd rather be spending the time on something else. Starting with the boundaries of saying no to activities and commitments that are not going to have a net positive on your well-being is a great place to start. There may be a commitment you would make in a different season of your life, like you would really love to contribute to some organization. But right now, if you commit to doing that work, it's going to burn you out. It's going to be too much. That is probably a net negative, right? It's going to contribute to exhaustion. It's going to contribute to burnout, and it's going to contribute to you maybe having a shorter temper because you're not having time to connect with yourself, right? Okay, so maybe it's a no right now. You can always come back to it later. Another way we can be intentional about choosing to do less is by letting go of daily perfection. So the laundry piles, the dishes in the sink, the store-bought snacks. Well, we're home. I should be able to make a full, beautiful meal. Well, maybe doing less looks like actually just preparing your kids something a little easier. Something I've gone to is like doing what I call a kid charcuterie board, and it's like little snacks for dinner. They love it. They get all the little things they need, and it's like a very little work for me. And I mean, really, it's kind of bougie. It's kind of like I've made my mind think like, oh, that's doing actually a lot for them. I'm giving them a charcuterie board. Like when I go buy a charcuterie board, it's like a fancy thing. But it's just these little shifts of saying, I don't have to do the most to be doing enough. Making sure the house is picked up every night. Yes, there are times where like that is super important to me. And I feel like I want to wake up to a semi-clean living room. But at other points, sometimes that's not the best use of my time. Sometimes it's more important to me that I go to sleep early, or that I have time to like FaceTime a friend who doesn't live near me, or I have time to read a book, just chill with myself, connect, journal. Sometimes that's more important. And if I'm so caught up in the perfection of trying to get the house perfectly organized before we wake up the next morning, I'm not going to have those times because, believe me, a lot of times the house is a disaster. Letting go of that perfection, choosing to do less, can be huge in just giving yourself more time to connect with yourself, more time to rest, more time to just be, to do the things that are more important to you than meeting this high standard of perfection. And then just a final piece of advice for learning to do less, for accepting that we can do less intentionally, is to prioritize presence over performance. Now, what do I mean by this? When we are trying to mother to that standard of the perfect mother, that often feels like we should be so incredibly engaged with our kids at all times, and that there's going to be some end result with our kids that they're also perfect, well-behaved kids because their mom is there and is so engaged and is so just like great at being a mom, doing everything right, right? So obviously they should be perfect too, right? Like that's the messaging and the story that oftentimes gets formed in our heads. When we can prioritize just being there, being present, doing the things that are going to allow us to be present. So maybe giving ourselves that time to rest, letting go of those like ideals of perfection that keep us kind of in a mental spiral when we're trying to spend time with our kids. When we can let go of those things and prioritize presence, being really present with our kids, even if it's for like a 10-minute chunk of time, And we let go of the idea of performance. I need to be doing something specific for the house, for the people in my life, for the groups that I volunteer for my kids. When we can let go of that and choose to be present in our lives and for our kids, it makes a huge difference because we're no longer in the achiever mode. We're no longer in this mode of, I need to achieve a certain level of perfection to be good enough, and instead just experiencing motherhood. We're doing less and experiencing more. So I invite you to ask yourself after listening to this, where am I trying to be perfect at the expense of peace? And really think on that one, because my guess is that there are many answers to that question. My guess is that there are a lot of areas where you have standards of perfection for yourself that are taking away from your experience of peace and of joy in motherhood. So take a moment to really think about that. Maybe if you have time and have a pen and paper available, journal on it. Never a bad idea. So we've talked about doing less, but it's also important to talk about redefining standards on your own terms. As I said, there is a lot of messaging we get about what it means to be a good mom. We're getting it constantly from media, whether that's TV and movies or social media, seeing these curated feeds. And just talked about that a lot in the last episode of comparing ourselves to other moms based on what we're seeing on social media and how it's not a representative look at how other moms are experiencing motherhood, but it's the look we have. And so we're constantly comparing ourselves to that. That contributes to the standards we have for ourselves. We also live in a world where the conversations amongst people tend to hold moms to these types of standards of perfection, right? It is a societal belief that moms should be the ones responsible for all things with their kids. Moms and dads are held to different standards. A lot falls on moms' plates, and that message is constantly perpetuated by everything and everyone around us. So it's so important to actually sit down and define what it means to be a good mom for yourself when it comes to holding yourself to any sort of standard. Instead of holding yourself to the default of like perfect mom standard, when you can say, what do I believe a good mom is, and change what you're holding yourself to, it's huge. Because there's this idea that if we're not holding ourselves to the high standard of perfect mom, that we're not holding ourselves to high standards. And that's not true at all. You can have really high standards for yourself and how you want to show up, but they're high standards that you selected for yourself. They are aligned to your value system and what you actually believe you want to do in motherhood to be a good mom for your kids. And that is a different thing than holding yourself to these standards of perfection that are completely unrealistic, completely unattainable. So I encourage you to think about it. I encourage you to, again, sit down with a pen and paper and journal about this. What matters to you in motherhood? Is it the perfectly clean house? Maybe. Maybe that's really important to you, for you to like feel at peace, to have your home looking really nice at all times. And that's great if it is. But it also may not be. What matters to you with your interactions with your kids? Presence, love, the fact that they know that they feel loved, stability, having financial stability because you have a job and you're able to provide for your kids in the way that they need to be provided for. Is it important to you that you are instilling a love for learning in your kids? Are you hoping to get them really excited about moving their bodies? That's really important to you. That's something you want to instill in them. Maybe it's just important to you that they feel safe. Maybe nutrition is really important to you and you want to make sure that you are spending time prioritizing the meals that you're making for them. Maybe that's enjoyable for you. There's no right answers here. But my guess is that when you really look at all the different areas of motherhood, what makes a good mom in your mind, when you really, really think about it, is probably different than this idea of doing it all and being it all that is set for us. So I encourage you, write down what matters to you in motherhood, and also write down what you can work on letting go of. Because I bet there are a lot of things that are not as important to you as they may seem right now. As we wrap up, I want to reiterate that lowering our standards in motherhood is not about having low standards. It's about not accepting these high, impossible standards that are placed on us from society, from external values. It really is about creating space for more of what actually matters to you in your motherhood experience and more of what allows you to be the mom that you want to be, the person that you want to be. Doing less is an act of courage and rebellion against a system that was never meant for you to thrive in. Your peace, your energy, your presence with your children, that is what matters. And being intentional about holding yourself to standards that allow for those things to flourish, that's what matters. That's what's going to keep you from feeling like you're failing in motherhood every day. That's what's going to make you feel better about your motherhood experience. Thank you so much for being here and tuning in. If this one hit a nerve for you, I encourage you to share it with other moms in your life. This is something we need to be talking about. We need to be pushing back against the standards that are set for us externally and really redefining for ourselves what it means to be a good mom so that we can do this in a way that feels good. That's it for this week. We'll be back next week with another incredible guest episode. Until then, you are worthy, mama.